Welcome. Hello, MACC members. I'm Laurel Hansen, MACC's Program and Member Engagement Manager. And welcome to Ask MACC Workforce Edition, brought to you by the Metropolitan Alliance of Connected Communities and our Human Resources team. We know our network is faced with ongoing and incredible challenges when it comes to workforce. It's how we provide valuable services to the community. Our workforce challenges can create difficult hurdles for our organizations to operate sustainably. There can be complex and seemingly insurmountable barriers, but luckily, we have incredible HR expertise at MACC, and as a part of our network, you have access to that HR expertise through our convenings and working with so many of you in the MACC network. So during this brief conversation, I'm joined by Jamie Hawkins, HR generalist at MACC. Jamie, hello, Jamie. Jamie brings her expertise to MACC and our members to provide the HR guidance they need to be successful. Thanks for joining me, Jamie.
Thank you, Laurel. It's great to be here.
So during this chat today, we're going to talk about diversity and inclusivity as a strategy to address workforce challenges, workforce shortages. And we do hear from MACC members that they struggle with workforce shortages and with increasing the diversity of their hiring pools. Like they want more access and a more diverse and inclusive hiring pool, but that continues to be a challenge. We know there are ways that leadership can increase the equity of the hiring process. And so we're always thinking about best practices there. The challenges are complex, but really critical to the sustainability of an organization's workforce. Since you work directly with MACC members on their recruitment, I'd like us to talk about that for a bit. Our organizations, they want their recruitment strategies to be more inclusive and more accessible. What are some things organizations should think differently about to achieve a more equitable recruitment process?
Yes, it's more important than ever in this time with our decreased labor shortage and our accessibility of companies. And what I have seen a lot lately is, or wanted to see and suggested for our organizations is look at the resume process differently in the application process in order to increase their applicant pool, and maybe look at sometimes you don't require a resume as much as possible. You don't require it and you accept the application. You can add questions, screening questions to your application if they are, deal breaker type skills or necessities. But really, we suggest trying to assess through the interview process, whether it's an initial phone screening before the interview or starting with an interview and a second, whatever you can do to allocate time to the interview process rather than looking through a resume and trying to assess their skills and qualifications through there. And more than ever, resumes are becoming a thing of the past or less popular due to the information that is on them that candidates can put on there that will tell the hiring manager more information than they need about the candidate. We need to just focus on their skills and their fit for the role in the organization and none of the other items throughout the interview process.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is it can be a hurdle, all of that sort of front end resume and steps like that, and the time is better spent building better questions and spending time talking to applicants to really get a sense of whether there's an alignment there.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've only got so many. It's a finite amount of resources and capacity that we have, so let's spend it on the important things. We've talked a little bit earlier about that skills-based hiring too. So for those positions that don't require excessive certifications, it seems like past history isn't always going to dictate what people can do in the future, and we really want to get to know the skills that they bring to the job. How can an organization really go down that path and consider lived experiences when seeking candidates to fill open positions? And how is that an idea strategy? What do you think?
Absolutely. And that can pertain to their looking at their experience with a wider perspective of how that can apply to each position. If a candidate has experience taking care of a relative, dependent relative, then it's possible that those skills could apply to homemaking or caretaking skills for, older or disabled community members or anything along those lines. So looking at skills or even just life experience and transfer them to actual job skills, and
Mhm,
consider again what skills are teachable versus what are
mm,
necessary. Whereas
mhm,
a candidate might have the skills needed for the role and need a little help with computer training.
mhm, mhm.
And that has greatly increased candidate pools from what I've seen and helped really diversify the applicant pool as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that distinction is really critical. Um, it does seem like there's an opportunity to change the lens used to consider the skills applicants need for an open position. What I think you touched on this a little bit already, but what about the language that we're using in job postings? Are you seeing like actual changes in language that is being used in order to attract applicants?
Yes, and I have seen managers and organizations being more careful than ever and more detail oriented than ever in what they post on the language included, and not including language that could be construed as biased or as pertaining to a skill that might not be required. So being very generalized as much as possible for the requirements required in order to bring in more candidates and then talk to them about what exactly that skill is, and kind of then filter through the details and get to the important parts. And again, their companies and organizations talking about their culture and who they are first, and always including their wage, and if possible wage
Mhm,
range on the posting as well, to be as
mhm.
transparent as possible.
Yeah, transparency, that I think is such an excellent progress that we've made in the field as well. Let's dig a little deeper. What are some good ways to make applications accessible to the largest group of qualified people? And has anything changed regarding how people are using references and background checks in the recruitment process?
Yes, we are suggesting and seeing more than ever the need to have a variety of ways to apply and a variety of places that it is posted. So we post our HR team posts on 5 different hiring platforms automatically,
Mhm,
and those include places like the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits or Indeed, as well
mhm,
as Minnesota Works, which has
mm,
a larger pool of those uh, needing accessible
mhm,
features on their job board.
mhm.
And so having all of these different places to target different audiences for your roles is important, and different skill levels, as well as networking, utilizing your company and sharing your flyer, your different forms of the posting with your company for them to then share with their network. And
I've go ahead.
as far as the use of references and background checks, the background check process hasn't changed due to the requirement not changing. We do see that for the background, it organizations will do the requirement and will keep that throughout the HR team in order to maintain complete confidential confidence and compliance
Mhm.
always. And as far as references, I have seen folks using those to also weed out or filter out skills-based hiring, and really gather as much information about the candidate as possible without
Mm.
using only the resume and application.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like a multitude of approaches, and um, sounds like you're doing really good work with MAC members. And I think that leads me into the next question that I have for you. I know you work extensively with MAC members on their recruitment needs. Can you share an example of a MAC member who maybe has tried something new in the recruiting approach, or experienced something new in their recruiting outcomes. I know our listeners would love to hear a real life example. What can you share with us today?
Absolutely. I have had a few members and conversations recently about how to really bring more attention to certain postings that have just not had traction for quite a while. And so we will look to dig deep and change up their language and highlight their branding on their posting. I had one member we did this for recently, Family Wise, for a position that had very specific title and detailed, somewhat lesser known industry and skills. And we were able to bring up the organization more up top, talk through the position in more generalized terms, less detailed, to help more folks understand what this specific area is. And that has helped them, or has increased the applicants they are receiving, and they are already into the interview process and looking for their candidate, whereas before they were just not seeing any candidates hardly that were fit for the role.
That's a great example. I appreciate you sharing that. There are always approaches and opportunities to dig deeper and look into the process. And I'm glad you were able to share some initial success stories of how it's worked for a MACC member as you've worked with them on their hiring needs. So appreciate you sharing that. Thank you, Jamie, so much for spending a few minutes with me today. That's all the time we have now for this discussion. It's been really interesting, and I appreciate your time and insights, Jamie. I look forward to continuing to talk with you in the future. MACC members, you're encouraged to visit the MACC website and the Ask MACC page of additional workforce resources. You'll find a variety of information and links to helpful content, including more in this series of recorded HR interviews. So keep in touch. We're here to support you and our network of MACC members. Thank you. Have a great day and be well. Goodbye.